Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the People ONS meeting on the 30th of January 2025. It is now gone 7 p.m. and I would like to start this meeting. I would also like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council's website. So on your way out, you may find that you've got fans with autographs and everything like that. There are no planned fire alarms this evening, so in the case of an emergency, please evacuate the building using the nearest available exit and congregate at the assembly point outside the college. I think that's a new addition to our formal greeting. One thing we no longer have, due to the changes of scrutiny that caused so much interesting debate last evening for anyone who was at full council, the capacity to raise urgent business has been removed by the bureaucrats that decide what we do within this council. Well, quite frankly, there is no place within the structure of the meeting to do that, but me being me, I'm going to take it as part of my greeting because I've got a couple of things that I need to say to this meeting tonight. So as part of my greeting, some of you may have been aware that following a recent cabinet meeting, I asked and was granted the right for a call-in on a decision relating to the Shared Lives project, which is an excellent scheme. However, I had one or two issues with it in terms of just purely the mechanics and process of the system. It's a good scheme. I think it will be really good, but I was a little bit concerned how we move from A to B, if you like, in the process of creating it. And so I called for a call-in and was told that absolutely I put forward sufficient grounds for that calling to be given. However, we have a slight problem in the call-in. I wanted to bring it to this evening's meeting. It would have taken us about 10 minutes to discuss the call-in, and we would have had a perfect solution to solve it. And I thought that was a pragmatic and sensible way to deal with it, but unfortunately, pragmacy and sensible and common sense do not seem to be ruling everything we do. So that's my comment on the situation. The alternative put forward by our advisors in the officer cohort was that we called a special meeting of this committee in February, and there would have only been that one item on the agenda, and as I say, it would have probably taken us 10 minutes to discuss it, maybe a little bit longer if anybody had any other questions. However, we've been told frequently about the cost of calling in meetings, officer time, resources, and whatever. So I suggested that we would put the item on the agenda for our meeting in March. However, there is the possibility that if we do that, it will hamper the administrative effort to get Shared Lives underway. So to try and make sense of the situation and not hold up something that I do think has extreme amounts of merit, I've had a meeting with Rob Percy. We've discussed the issues that he read in my call-in document. We've looked at issues that I was concerned about, and he has assured me and made me comfortable that we can allow it to go forward in this instance. I think it's a lesson we need to learn as a council. The portfolio holder for adult services conceded that it was a matter that should have come to this committee. I mean, if anybody doesn't know about it, it's a Shared Lives, a great concept whereby people who are disadvantaged with disabilities are cared for within family environments within the borough. It is a very good scheme. The plan was for a 5-year contract with service providers, with an extension to an option to extend for a couple of years after that. So effectively it could be a 5 or a 7-year contract, so it's substantive. And the money involved that we would be paying out over that time is around the £4 million mark. So I think, again, it's substantive. It's something that we should have had oversight on. That's what we're here for, to scrutinise big decisions, big contracts, and whatever. So I hope a lesson has been learned from that. So I don't want to be the person that messes up Shared Lives, and so I am withdrawing my call-in. So the matter will now progress. It will go to the next cabinet. Well, it doesn't even need to go to the next cabinet meeting. Rob and his team can progress. I've looked the man in the eye. He's told me the answers, and I have to take our officers on faith. We have discussed it, and we will have further discussions, and I will be keeping a weather eye on the project while ever I've got any sort of jurisdiction within the council. So anybody who wants to know, you may have had notice of a meeting next month. I'm pleased to be able to tell you that you don't have to come down here and deal with that. And as I say, those of you who are prepared to, thank you very much. Officers who were prepared to come out, thank you very much indeed. So that's that dealt with as part of my greeting. And also as part of my greeting, I would probably draw your attention to the fact that some of you may have seen recent publicity regarding maternity services at Basildon Hospital. Well, in fact, throughout the whole of the Mid and South Essex Trust, there are a substantial amount of concerns about the provision of service, and it's something that, again, this committee has a degree of interest in, and we have discussed it at some length in the past. Councillor Hooper and I both attended a briefing yesterday with members of the Trust, and matters are in hand and public statements have been made about the course of action that has been taken in consultation with the CQC, and we were sufficiently assured that there is proper scrutiny, but it's something that we probably will revisit at our next meeting, which will be an appropriate time. But I did want to pay attention to it. And I can say there are other issues within that trust that are probably going to come to light in the next few days. I can't go into detail. It would be improper of me to do so, but I want, when it is evidenced, you will see what it is. And again, Councillor Hooper and I, in our respective roles within this authority, to look after the best interests of Thurrock people, will be right on top of it, and that is something that we will definitely be bringing to our next meeting. So, good evening. That's my introduction to tonight's meeting. So we move on to officially onto item 1, which is, are there any apologies for absence that we have not already received? The ones we've received are Kim James, Sharon Stoltz, and Angela Surrey. Noted. Thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 2. And again, I hope you've all had a leaf through the minutes of our previous meeting that was held on the 19th of November. And they're in the agenda, and I'm sure that I can't see anything that I'm particularly concerned about, but are there any comments about those minutes or their accuracy from members that they would like to have noted for posterity? In which case, I will get my signature on that document. The minutes are now approved. Item 3, declarations of interest. I hope you're all interested, but any particular declarations of interest to declare this evening? Thank you very much indeed. So we now move on to something that I've been waiting for with bated breath. I was absolutely delighted to read the documentation that accompanies the report that is going to put with us by Councillor Rigby and Serena Gill this evening, which is the Task and Finish Group final report. This is a child and obesity Task and Finish Group, I should have said. It's the final report. It's a substantive document, and spotlights on Liz and Serena, so over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so good evening, everyone. The Childhood Task and Finish Group was set up in response to the People, Overview and Scrutiny Committee's concerns with the high rates of childhood obesity in Thurrock. There is an urgent need to halt the upward trend. We need to reverse it and then to improve the health outcomes of children and young people into adulthood. The cycle needs to be broken by a whole systems approach to encourage women to be at a healthy weight pre-pregnancy to reduce the likelihood of obesity in the next generation. The group attended 5 themed sessions: a health in all policies approach to healthy place shaping, maternity and health visiting, a meeting with wider stakeholders, which were the community and voluntary sector, the integrated care board and physical activity providers, a meeting with young people, and a visit to a family hub to spend time with staff and parents and carers. There were also some supplementary meetings outside these 5 set meetings, which were with schools, primary care, and also visits to local businesses and community services. There was an additional joint meeting with the Place, Task and Finish School Streets Committee. Full details of all the meetings are in Appendix 1 of the report. The key themes were lack of confidence and awareness in how to choose and prepare healthy foods, perception of many healthy foods being expensive, ease of obtaining fast food, and perceived barriers to physical activity and exercise. We need children to be healthy and active for both physical and mental health. The recommendations seek to address this by improving signposting of services and offerings within the borough, increased community and partnership engagements, strengthened collaboration between council departments, empowering staff within primary care and the wider system to help patients with their weight, and for areas outside of council control, such as schools and other stakeholders, including the Integrated Care Board, to work with them to achieve aims. There are already good things happening to support the recommendations of the report. The local child weight management offer has been strengthened. 2 Henry, which is health, exercise and nutrition for the really young, programmes have already launched in Thurrock for 0 to 4 and 5 to 12-year-olds and their families. It is a great initiative helping parents with many aspects of childcare with a key focus on healthy eating and nutrition. A new council-led trainer service will launch in April, including an adult weight management offer, which should see improvements in offerings and outcomes. A bid is in development to seek funding from Sport England via the Place Expansion Programme to improve the physical activity offer in Thurrock. There are community projects such as community capacity building, food growing schemes, and food provision. For example, Perfect Pantry, they're underway. The findings and recommendation of the report have been incorporated within a new Thurrock Healthy Weight strategy, which is currently in development. The strategy adopts a whole systems approach to support individuals of all ages and will go to the Health and Wellbeing Board and Cabinet in due course. The Task and Finish report is going to Cabinet in March, and if approved, the recommendations will be monitored and reviewed at frequent intervals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Does anybody, I mean, Serena, have you anything anybody want to add to that? Are we're all happy? Okay, any questions from members? Or any observations from members? Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. When I was at school, there were always, I see a couple of references to water fountains, which I always remember them at school. Were they taken away for some reason? Or was it just they weren't cost effective? Do we know that? Because I'm wondering why it was something that I always remember as a child, and then they suddenly disappeared. I wondered if there was a reason they were taken away.
Is this within schools specifically? Or?
I mean, I remember them more being in school, definitely, but also in public there were quite a few of them when I was growing up. I just wondered why they were moved, or if we know.
Absolutely, Michelle.
That's better. You can hear me now, can't you? That's better. I suspect much of that is around hygiene. I think there's probably an issue around lots of little children, colds, coughs, sneezes, all the things that we know about, sort of putting their mouth into the thing. What's interesting, I think, though, from what you're saying in the report, there's something for me about if there are water fountains there. Many of the children now have got the little water bottles, haven't they? I mean, they're very proud of their little water bottles, aren't they? So I think there's something to explore in that, but I suspect it's around hygiene, colleagues. That will be the reason they were taken away.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to add a point. Where is it? 2.9. I think the subsidised gym and sports sessions, and also the junior park runs, I think are just a fantastic idea. I think I know a lot of family or mothers and fathers who can't go to the gym because they can't take the child with them. And if there's a case that the child can join in, I think it's going to get even adults back in the gym more. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I think, Councillor Johnson, you're absolutely right. And I think just to touch on the water issue, I have got grandkids in school now, and it's not that long since some of my other children were in secondary schools. And as a governor, I've been into a couple of schools on a frequent basis, and in my other hat, I've visited several other schools. And one thing that there are now quite a lot of are water, what we call them water fountains. It's actually a tap, and it's fill your drinking vessel up. And I think, you know, one of the things that we as a council can do, and we'll go through all the recommendations in a minute, but what I would like to see is some proactive work by the council with some of its partners, and that may be, you know, we've got, for example, some of the big logistics companies in this area that are shifting millions of gallons of bottled water around our borough, an awful lot. And to take it to the extent, for example, I think nearly every banana in Britain now, and I think it's something like 30 odd billion of them a year, are imported through Thurrock. So we've got access to certain things that we can lean on a few people, and I think it comes back to being proactive as a council. And one of the reasons why I wanted this report to come out is that, and hopefully Cabinet will endorse it, is that we actually, you know, this could be, you could take this, stick it on a shelf, and it'll never be seen again. And that's what happens to a lot of stuff. What I hope it does, and I appreciate the depth that people have, and I would say, let's get it out of the way now, that Tony, Shrikant, Elizabeth, and Georgina, and all the officers who've been involved, I think it's a great document. I remember saying at the outset of this, this work will not singularly take 1 ounce itself off a weight of a particular child in Thurrock. What it will do is it will be a reference point going forward. We've got everything that we need in one document, and when we talk about obesity, people should refer back to this task and finish group and look at what we've done, because, as I say, it's a really good composite piece of work, but it is a reference document. You know, we can't physically do a huge amount, as I say, but it can be embedded into the ethos of this council that we have a responsibility to do something more than just tut-tut, to look at it and say, oh, these figures are terrible. We, as a council, as an authority, as corporate parents, all those things that we are, you know, we should go out and try and have a can-do attitude and try and make a difference. And for far too long, not just within this authority, I've seen the roles of councils across the country, because I do deal with an awful lot of them, and it becomes a what's the least we can get away with mentality. And I really hope that, you know, that Thurrock, or whatever follows in years to come, doesn't have a what's the least we can get away with mentality. We really start to care for our kids, and then we've got particular areas within this borough where there is a significant amount of deprivation and a significant amount of need, and we can lead the way. And again, all these things here go through it. But has anybody else got anything that they would like to say before we consign this to our friends in Cabinet? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. Regarding this PE, timetable, 2 hours physical education weekly recommended within the government school sports and activity action plan. So just I would like to know that, any possibilities where we can able to improve the more than 2 hours per week, because as per our database, if we see that reception and the primary school obesity is more than region and more than national level. So we need to improve the hours of the physical activity, and also as per the record shows that we have over 30,000 school children within the borough, 39 primary schools and 13 secondary schools, and 1 alternative provision and 3 special schools. Out of that schools, how many schools have indoor facility where they can play indoor sports and games? Because the weather not permit all the time to play outside because of the cold, and if we have the facility to play indoor games, sports and games, that will be a physical activity, people, students can utilize, and they can work on the physical activity. It will help. Just my recommendation, this one. Thank you.
Point very well made, and it's interesting, physical activity. I'm sure all of us have seen across our wards that we've got a lot of, I think they're called Addy zones. Sorry, Rob, yeah, go on.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to make a couple of observations linked to that point and also to Councillor Johnson. I think going back in time, I think one of the reasons Ward fans came away was Legionella was particularly one of the issues. And so obviously that was their health risk, building on Michelle's point. Water refill stations are a really popular program. There's a national program about water refill stations, getting retail outlets and other places to kind of provide free water. And certainly where I was previously, that was a very active program. I know it's across London as well. So I want to say we will, as officers, we really welcome this task finish report. We will look to really take it forward and put in place actions to try and improve the situation. And just on that final point about physical activity in schools, just to try and make the links, on, was it Monday evening we had Health and Wellbeing Board, or Tuesday afternoon we had Health and Wellbeing Board? Active Essex came and did a presentation here. They have got funding coming into Thurrock to promote physical activities linked to the physical activity strategy, and that's focused on all age, but with a focus on young people working in schools. And we looked at a range of initiatives, including further promotion of the Daily Mile. It was spoken about, to try and encourage greater physical activity. So it doesn't necessarily need to be in a formal environment, but trying to encourage physical activity in the borough. And I think Active Essex will be a really interesting partner that we are working with across different council directorates and the voluntary community sector to really try and promote that programme. So your points are well made, and I want to assure you we're looking at programmes to really take this forward. Sorry, thank you, Chair.
Okay, before I sort of pick up, I didn't know whether, sorry, Councillor Harstein, I mean, this is something that really cuts across your domain, and clearly you'll be a part of the Cabinet receiving this report. Is there anything that you would wish to, feel that you'd like to say, or if not, just...
Thank you, Chair. Now, the only thing I would like to raise, it was just really interesting reading through, I'm talking about page 32 and 33, it was just to look at the insightfulness of the children and young people's feedback, and just touching on Councillor Pangjala and obviously Councillor Rigby and Councillor Johnson's points, especially around PE in schools and the idea of increasing it beyond 2 hours a week. Obviously, schools now, unfortunately, because of the pressures of the national curriculum, exams, GCSEs, as the young people themselves have pointed out, from personal experience, I can share that young people now, unfortunately, are sort of probably doing 1 hour a fortnight at sort of upper key stage 4 of PE, which is really quite, unhelpful in terms of this. But it's certainly something, it's a good report, but I was particularly pleased with the insightfulness of the children and the young people in terms of recognising the issues that they have and also the experience that they have in schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hartstein. Just as I was saying after Councillor Panjala's point, across the borough, we've probably in all of our wards, we've got, I think it's called Addy zones, or Olympic parks, I think they were. And first of all, let's make the obvious statement that I know will appear on social media the moment you put in, oh yeah, well all the kids do is burn them down once you build them and install them. And we've got that mentality. And I remember attending, I think there was one on Gobians at East Tilbury, which some little scroats came along and set fire to and thought it was really, really funny. And you've got two ways to go then. You either say, okay, we won't replace it, we won't put it in, or you try and take a more positive attitude and say, yeah, we will, we're not going to be beaten, and we're going to work at this and make it so. And that, at the end of the day, is going to involve some capital being put in reserve for when we need to do running repairs or whatever it is we need to do. And equally, I know that one of my colleagues in the Stamford area had a meeting this week around Corringham Park, Corringham Town Park, where there is an Addy zone, or whatever it's called, and it's not in a great state of repair, and even more so, the paths and roads, the pathways and access points around it are pretty awful. And he met with our highways team and our parks team, and immediately got the, well, we can't afford to do this. Well, and this is where it comes down to Cabinet. Cabinet make the decisions, Cabinet are the executive. All we're here to do is to come up with ideas, to check that they're doing their job properly as well. And again, I go back to, you know, it's a glass, appropriately, in line to what Councillor John, it's the glass half full or the glass half empty attitude. And I'd just like to see this council make some bold decisions when it comes down to finances and put, you know, we know this, you know, we're sick to death of hearing what a terrible situation we're all in. Well, you know, there are always, you know, two ways to do anything, and we can attack it positively. So I just hope that this report and the time and effort that's been put into it, it becomes a document that people really start to believe in. As I say, singularly, it won't, you know, as a piece of paper, do very much indeed, but as a catalyst for thought and as a focal point for ideas and as a reference, I think it's a great document. So, and to give it the respect that I think it's due, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually read through each recommendation. We can give each one the nod if you wish, and I think that's what we should do, and we should do it. So I shall start. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Sorry. Well, we'll start with Tony, and then we'll come to you, Cece.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Hazeltine's comments made me remember the very interesting session we had with the youth cabinet members. I think it was one of the most illuminating sessions that we did have. And their comments about physical activity, for instance, and PE in schools. So their comments were that, okay, there is PE in schools, but it's only for the people that are really interested. The other ones just stand around and don't do anything, which isn't the kind of PE lessons I remember at school. You know, obviously things have changed, so there needs to be some improvement there. Also about physical activities that you do voluntarily after school, they are there. How do you get to them? Parents don't feel safe, don't feel it's safe to allow their children to go out at night. So that's another kind of wider problem in society that impinges on this issue. And then the other thing as well is a general comment about the whole task and finish group's work, was that there's so much good stuff going on out there that people just aren't aware of. So, you know, it's a good idea to promote that. And that it's a very complex issue. As there is a section on the maternity side of it that we looked at, and how that can affect the child right from birth. So things need to be happening even before the children are born to make sure that we know we can prevent it. And the other thing was just about how everything's connected as well. If the physical activity is there, that's one part of it, but then you need to have knowledge of what is good nutrition, what's good to eat. You put all those things together, and you know you can start making inroads into the issue. But it's a complex situation, and this is a good start, I think.
I'll come into a second, Councillor Mamo, but Tony, you're absolutely right, and you know, and again. And I don't want to sound like I'm on my soapbox, although that's what it will sound like. You know, we've made some decisions in this council for what may seem like valid reasons and they're short-term reasons, and we can put it together. I mean, one of the decisions was, for example, we withdrew support for organisations like the Princess Trust, the Duke of Edinburgh's award. We chipped away at them, and there was there was a huge amount of great work being done there, and my nemesis, Councillor Worrell, will probably be pleased for once in something that I've had to say, that we should look at that again as and when we can and try and restore it, because, you know, again, not big numbers of people, but really did change people's lives, and often including the physicality of those lives by taking them away, by getting them out and about, you know, and sometimes we slash that red pen across a budget, and we don't really think about the long-term consequences. We think short-term. So I do, and you're quite right about young people. I was privileged to be able, and corporate parenting, we got an invite to some more events that are coming up. I went to see a Young Voices event over at Grange Waters a few months ago now. And you talk about young kids, some who sat against all, there were 30, 40, maybe more of our children that looked after children there. playing football, playing ball games, literally running up and down, engaging in physical activity because the support was there, the report was there. It was an environment that they felt really, really happy with. The team, the Young Voices team and their supporters and their the people that were with them, and some of them are our staff, and kudos to them as well. It was just a thoroughly brilliant afternoon. You know, and this myth that all young people want to do now is sit at home and play on their computers. Well, yeah, I can see there's certainly some substance to that argument. But, you know, also there are a lot of kids out there, given an opportunity, will take it. So anyway, that's again me. Councillor Manuel.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to emphasise recommendation 2.4, which is in relation to food partnerships and actually signposting people to charities and other organisations that can offer healthy food. Because I think I visited one in Grays, I think it's called the Sapphire Space, and they offered lots of free food for local residents, not just in Grays but in Thurrock, to take. And it was also nice to see that it was like fresh fruit and vegetables, because as we've kind of discussed, one of the big barriers to eating like a healthy, balanced diet is that people would argue, oh, it's too expensive, fruit and vegetables, we can't really afford that. But there are organisations that are actually offering free, fresh fruit and vegetables, which I think would be a really good thing if more people were able to take it up. But as we've said, if you don't know like these organisations are there, then you can't really take advantage of it. And especially in a time where we've already laboured the point to death about the council's financial situation, if there are certain things that the council isn't really able to do, like ourselves, we should be referring people to organisations who can offer support where maybe we don't have the capacity to do so directly. Yeah, just aside from schools and aside from the things that we do, charities and other organisations that are able to offer that, I think if we did maybe a bit of a better job in signposting people to those organisations, it would be really helpful. But that's just my observation.
Thank you. Councillor Cecil.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add on to what you were talking about with Duke and Edinburgh schemes, they trained our future leaders, and they're not coming through, and that's one of the real drawbacks to much activity. There aren't adults coming through who are prepared to give their time, and we've got to try and encourage that so that they do make themselves available.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, and as I say, I don't want to accentuate the negative, and you know, and just talk about what we've caught. There is still a huge amount going on, and I know Georgina was a part of this, and I know Family Connections are involved in a fantastic youth organisation just down the road here on the industrial estate, on the Globeworks, that does amazing work. Not necessarily in terms of athleticism or whatever, but engages with young people and shows them that there are people who care. And if those young people see that we care and that we're trying to help, yeah, you're always going to get the cynics, but never let the lowest common denominator decide policy. So, you know, I just think we've just got to be positive, you know, and talk is cheap, of course it is, but just need some bold decision making and some brave decision making. So, anybody else got anything that you would wish to add? Officers? Anybody? Right, in which case I'm going to do what? Sorry. Oh, Liz, sorry.
Sorry, I'll just add, I'd like to thank Serena and her colleagues, Claire, of course, and all the committee, and also to everyone that gave up their time to help us with the Task and Finish group. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I've already said it, but I absolutely endorse that. Yeah, Georgie, go on.
Liz, you're thanking us, but actually we'd like to thank you for your time and your dedication. Liz visited my business quite a few times, and that's one of the reasons why I was involved in this project, running an Afro-Caribbean sort of store. Liz came in a few times and is now a customer. But yeah, your dedication was really clear to see, so thank you.
100%, and I was actually going to finish with that, but I'll say it now. But I remember saying when we appointed the committee, and Liz kindly stepped forward to do it. And I said, I'm sure you'll be amazing, and you have been. And again, to echo that, thank you very much. Okay, look, I'm going to run through these. I'll just quickly say, does everybody agree? And I think each one deserves its merit. So we'll start with 2.1. And these are guidelines, they're messages that we're taking, that what we want to do as a borough. 2.1, we want to build confidence and capacity to deliver healthy weight management advice in the Thurrock health and care workforce with a key focus on staff in primary care. We all endorse that? Probably. With 2.2, continue, and Liz referenced this, continue to support and roll out the health, exercise, nutrition in the really young Henry programme and an adult weight management offer from April 2025. I look forward to that happening. Everybody happy? Yep, we'll tick these off. 2.3, expand the food growing and community capacity building projects within the borough, as well as other community projects such as the Purfleet Pantry, which I've visited. It's amazing. Great place. Do we support that and recommend it? Absolutely. As Councillor Manwer absolutely drew attention to, review the use of food partnerships and networks in other local authorities for expansion within Thurrock. We can learn from people. Let's not be frightened to do that. Everybody okay? Great. Work with the 2.5, work with the council's planning department to support opportunities for physical activity, for example, through maximising the use of green space, improving lighting, and play and exercise equipment within parks. That speaks for itself. Everybody happy with that? And then to move on to something that is really important, and I hope Cabinet really get a grip on this one as to what we can and can't do. 2.6, work with the council's planning and regeneration departments to explore planning conditions on new fast food or takeaway outlets, including possible restrictions on proximity to schools and healthier food offerings. Some councils have done that. They've been bold, they've been brave. I'm pleased to see it on there, and I heartily recommend that. I'm sure everybody supports it. Thank you. 2.7, and Barry would love to see this, increase water fountains in council-owned areas and encourage provision in other public settings. Give that a nod, great. 2.8, collaborative working across public health, the Place Directorate and wider stakeholders to support active travel and increased physical activity, for example, through initiatives such as school streets. Before Liz, could school streets, or someone just like to just explain that? Sorry, I'd give a little bit of mention.
Yes, so that's a task and finish group under the Place, Overview and Scrutiny Committee. They're looking at options for sort of walking to school, the practicalities of where parents can park, how they can walk. Obviously, it has an impact with our committee with physical activity. So we did have a joint meeting on that. I think that task finish group is still in progress at the moment. But David, you sit on the committee, don't you? So David might know, Councillor Day, sorry, might know more on that.
We're waiting for some recommendations, actually. So I think they're coming up next month. So we should be able to report with more clarity exactly what they recommend. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Yeah, I mean, and I'll just single out. It's got its own report. You had that joint meeting. Fantastic, collaborative working. Who'd have thought it? Brilliant. So 2.8, I'm sure we all absolutely agree with. See all the nods around the room. 2.9, explore opportunities to support young people to engage in physical activity, for example, through subsidised gym and sports sessions and junior park runs. I'm sure we're all bang on with that one. Develop a joined up and collaborative approach between council departments and partners to simplify and maximise opportunities to promote children's healthy weight. We just talk to each other, and as you've just illustrated, it works. 2.11, improved signposting of healthy lifestyle messages, services and campaigns through partners, including the council website, GP surgeries and community spaces. I'm sure we'd all endorse that, absolutely. 2.12, work with the Mid and South Essex Integrated Care Board to link up Tier 2 and Tier 3 paediatric services to ensure young people and their families are offered the services appropriate to their needs. Again, talking to each other, talking to our partners. Nods all round. 2.13, work with the Mid and South Essex Integrated Care Board to focus on the prevention of maternal obesity. We touched on that earlier on. Again, good stuff. I think my paperwork is not as good as it was. There we go. 2.14, work with school food providers and the holiday activity and food programme to ensure the meals provided are healthy and nutritious. Nods again. 2.15, this is some bullet points. Work with and encourage schools to timetable 2 hours of physical education weekly as recommended within the government schools sports and activity action plan, and to promote campaigns such as the Daily Mile, especially at secondary school level. Provide a basic understanding and knowledge of nutrition and offer food technology classes. Provide affordable, healthy food options and ensure sufficient break time to allow for eating a meal. And increase access, we touched on the same thing here, increase access to free drinking water, for example, via provision of water fountains. That's 2.15, which we all support. And finally, 2.16, support appropriate government initiatives to improve healthy eating and physical activity. And let's hope that's coming out of Westminster soon, because all we seem to get out there at the moment telling us things we can't do. So let's get some things that we can and make a difference. Members, thank you very much for endorsing that. Sorry, Vicky, yeah. Councillor Hartstein.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to come back. It's not a problem. It's just that I was waving and I wasn't seen. Could I come back to 2.8? Just talking about the school street. The school streets, I'm just going to explain what it was. It's the school street scheme. It's where cars are prevented from going into a certain area unless you live there or you're work in the school. So that's what that is. And then there'll be penalty charge notices and things. Thanks.
Apologies, I'm going to have to try and get some wider vision glasses. Right, well, as I say, that puts that to bed. We've got our recommendations. Thank you so much to all those who took part, particularly Councillor Rigby, particularly the office staff who did get behind this. I know they did. And it's a start. It's a very small start, but you've got to start somewhere, and I think it's a very good start. Okay, thank you very much. So at that, we'll move on to item 5, which is the second quarter forecast revenue and capital outturn report. We've had a really detailed report put before us in terms of facts and figures and words. What I've asked our two directors of service to do is just briefly touch on anything that they think should be brought to our attention. And flag up any red flags or possibly any green flags that come across our desks.
Thank you, Chair. So no red flags from us. And what we're going to propose is actually to ask SEMA as our finance partner to just introduce on behalf of both directors what the current financial position is for both directorates. Sorry, we're going to ask SEMA to introduce our observations on behalf of both directorates.
My apologies. You'll be pleased to know I'm having my ears waxed tomorrow.
Thank you. Members, what you've got in front of you is the Q2 report that was presented at Cabinet in December, and that is the full report. From Q3, what you will get is the specific people overview and scrutiny report, so just the people figures and the data to go with it. The highlights, adults and health. Adult social care is reporting a projected underspend of 1.3 million at Q2, with a very slight reduction on Q1. And although it's still underspending, there is a 153k reduction in that underspend position, primarily on external placements. There has been an increase in client numbers in receipt of home care and direct payments in mental health services between Q1 and 2. And physical disability services as well has seen an increase in client numbers in nursing care and supported living since Q1. The expansion of the locality model, however, has resulted in forecast underspends in older people's and learning disabilities services. There has been some movement, again, on the average weekly cost of placements, with the largest increases in older people's nursing care and learning disabilities residential care because of prices in the market. And children's social care, the overspend position for children's services is 534k, so a further reduction since Q1 by 466k, so moving in the correct direction. Primarily, this has come about due to the reduction of the number of pupils in receipt of school transport as we've implemented the new school transport routes from September, and the number of pupils that are now contracted has gone down to 975 at Q2 from over 1,000 at Q1, with a number of routes remaining the same. This has, however, been offset by an increase in children and family services due to placement and cost increases, and that is, again, due to complexity, which is causing further rises in fees and support costs. And that's only partially been offset by increased contributions from health and education. The DSG high needs block again shows a further increase from the Q1 position, demonstrating the need for a long-term government solution to the funding available to schools and the high needs block in particular. Overall, the savings that have been delivered in adults and health and children's social care is a further improvement and a good news story. And children's services are forecast to deliver full delivery of all of their savings that are in the target. Thank you.
Thank you for some positive move. Any questions, anybody? Councillor Day.
I'm looking at the graph on page 86. Is that right? It says there was a nearly 3 million overspend in Q2, and then there was an overspend in Q1. How can all of the risk bar one, risk mitigation, be marked green? And how can you assure residents and us councillors that Thurrock will have a balanced budget in 24-25?
So we are working very closely with all the services to bring down any overspends, and you will get the Q3 report in March, and I can say that there is a further reduction as we work very closely with services to bring down their overspend positions, cut back on cost areas, try and find further efficiencies, and also we are utilising all available budgets, all available funding. We're doing deep dives on all budget areas, trying to push that savings delivery as well. So we are tracking every single area of the finances and making sure it's all on track and delivered.
So there will be further reductions?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Thank you, by the way.
Great. Well, thank you for the detail in this report. I think it's really important that we do touch on this on a regular basis. And, you know, since we started doing this, we've actually been able, on I think now 3 successive meetings, to report something positive. I'm not going to touch wood that we get to the year end with 4, but I hope we do. So at which point, obviously, I'll touch on the recommendations. I will read them out. We've got 2.1, we don't need to do it individually. 2.1, note and we're asked, this committee is recommended to note and comment on the Council's service position and forecast overspend position as at Q2 of 2.722 million, representing a reduction of 0.348 million on the position presented at Q1, which Seema touched on. Note and comment on the Council's overall position and forecast overspend at Q2 of 1.896, representing a reduction of 0.209 million on the position presented at Q1. Note the approval of the transfer of 1.381 million reserves to an MTFS delivery reserve and 1.5 million to an adult social care children's demographic risk reserve. as per section 14 of Appendix 1 and 4.7 below, approved at Cabinet 11th of December. At which point I'm just going to hold breath and say, would you just like to comment on that? I think it's a complex recommendation to note.
It is. So I did expect to clarify this one. So there were historic reserves that once I've done a full reconciliation, I realised that those reserves were very historic and no longer needed in all the services. So what we thought is to combine them all together, and we made sure all the services were on board with this, and they were definitely earmarked reserves that were no longer applicable and no longer needed. So we amalgamated them all, and we decided that we would set up two specific reserves. One is an MTFS risk reserve to offset any unforeseen budget pressures that we have in the future. And 1.5 million is a very specific adult social care and children's social care demographic risk reserve, so that we hold that amount for any unforeseen demographic increases that we face, and that can be called upon to specifically mitigate any budget pressures.
Could you just touch on the demographic change that I mean, are we talking about an influx of refugees, for example, or is it something like that? What are the criteria that you're looking at?
Yeah, so we've also put growth. So when you see the final budget report, you will see growth in there for demographic for adult social care and children's social care. That's mainly for, we always do demographic calculations to allow for growth in client numbers. But this is a buffer just in case we suddenly face a very increase in complexity, and we face a lot of challenges within meeting budget pressures within adult social care and children's social care. So we always have a buffer, but we didn't have it in reserves. So this will allow a reserve specifically earmarked for demographic growth in the two service areas for people.
Well, I see sparks flying from Councillor Johnson's calculator. So, so Councillor Johnson.
I'm sorry, Chair. I probably should have brought it up earlier, but I'm under the executive summary 1.2. It says the total service position is showing 2.722 net overspend. Yet those two overspends that are in the report, in that same paragraph, add up to 3.1 million. Is that just an error, or is there a reason for that? It's a difference of 378,000.
I think pause while calculations have been looked at, but we've got time on our side. We're fine. We don't need to rush through. We can always walk out at 9:30.
So the service position, which is the blue line on table, it is a bit small. The service position, so that's all the front-facing services, is 2.722 million forecast overspend at Q2 against the budget of 3.070 million. That's the middle line. So what I've tried to do is be very transparent. So you've got the service position, and then you've got the bottom bit, which is the funding, and then the net position of the council position overall. So it's the 2.722 is the service position.
So are you saying that there's some areas in that have underspent? That's why it's come back into that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Rob, did you want to speak, or you?
No, Councillor Johnson's recognised it. So it's just the fact that there's a number of directors which are overspending, but adult health is underspending. So it's a net. It's yeah.
You happy, Councillor Johnson? And you're happy with as written? You're happy with as written because we're going to go down as. Yep, absolutely. Thank you. So we move on to 2.4, and thank you for that. I think we get there. Did you want to say something else? Yeah, by all.
sorry, just to come back, what I'll do for Q3 onwards is you'll just get the people figures rather than the whole council, because I think it'll make it easier for people overviewing scrutiny to scrutinise their own figures. And that was brought up a place overviewing scrutiny as well.
I think, if I'm honest, the same type of thing happened last time, and I said the same thing then. You know, you were reporting everything, yet it was just this area we were interested in. Yeah, okay. Well, that's not true. We're interested in the overall spend, but this is the particular area. Okay, thank you.
I'll take blame, if you like, for that. In that I asked Rob and Chid to sort of specifically talk on their own directorates and whatever, and possibly I didn't make clear exactly what I thought we want. And I'm a bit like you. I don't mind having all the paraphernalia around it, but we need to be able to pick out what we really need to focus. So we'll get better as we go along, and I'm sure we're all learning lessons with every meeting. Yeah. Good. Okay, so I'll move on to 2.4 to note and comment on the progress made on delivery against the savings target for 2024-25 and the remaining red brackets unachievable rated savings. 2.5, further to an in-depth review and reprofiling of the General Fund capital projects to note and comment on the capital programme and the anticipated General Fund capital programme slippage 30.67 million and 10.157 million HRA capital programme slippage projected in the report. And as that's complex, I'm just going to say, is there anything that needs to be said about that specific recommendation? Do we all understand it? And we've got it, that's fine. 2.6, note the approval of the addition of the DEFRA grant funding in the capital programme as per section 16 of Appendix 1 and 4.12 below, approved at Cabinet on the 11th of December 2024. So we're all happy to note all the things that we're happy to note. Noted, Kai. Right, we move on, therefore, having got that out of the way, to item 6. I ain't got a clue on what page it is, Barry. I break mine up into individual ones. We'll find it because I would like to ask Andrew Winston to present the report, which is Funded Childcare Provision and Wraparound Care Needs Assessment Report, Childcare Sufficiency Assessment. Over to you. Yeah, the 129 for those who are following from the pulpit.
Thank you very much. A bit of a mouthful, wasn't it? Sorry about that. So this is an annual report that comes to this committee that allows members and the council to understand the supply and demand of childcare and wraparound childcare, early years childcare as well in the local authority. The council has a duty to work with providers to ensure there's enough places for working parents and for those who are entitled to the extended childcare hours now and the increased age range. So the report just highlights where we're focusing our work, where we're concentrating our work in the areas of need, which are the red areas, and the areas that we work with where there's not so much need, but we still try to encourage providers to open. And then the green areas in the report are where the report has identified there's sufficient childcare or indeed an oversupply. So we work on an oversupply market. We don't need there to be just enough. We need there to be plenty of childcare places so that parents have choice. They might choose to use access childcare in their school or a childminder, a private, voluntary or independent provider, or they might choose to in fact access childcare where they work, which might be in a completely different locality, a completely different local authority. So we aim, where you see red, that might not mean that there's parents waiting. And in fact, we've had nobody contact us to say there are no places that they're waiting for. So hopefully you'll understand where our officers are helping other independent private providers, as well as schools, to increase their capacity to meet the supply and demand.
I've got a couple of things, but any other members got any questions on this? I mean, I can see you all leafing through the project. And which springs to mind, that I admit an omission on my part. I did mean in minutes to touch, if you remember, we discussed at our last meeting very briefly at the outset an issue about funding of childcare places, and some issues had arisen. And it was remiss of me not to say, give you an update to say that, and thanks very much for the intervention of Sheila, most of the problems that were highlighted subsequent to our meeting have been resolved, and I think we're in a good place, touch wood now, in terms of our financial management of that. Let's hope we've got it back on track. And I'm sure if we haven't, people will let us know. And I probably ought to have declared an interest in that my son actually works in the wraparound care field. So he'll no doubt harangue me and say, Dad, you should have done this and you should have done that. But sorry, Barry, yeah. Barry, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I've got no comments any nasty comments at all. As Sheila and Michelle know, I do struggle with reg ratings, being colourblind, but I have to say, this is one of the most easily readable reports I've ever seen in front of me. Absolutely, so easy to read. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Heath.
Yeah, thank you for the report. It really is easy to read, as Councillor Johnson says. I'm just querying, I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this, and I don't know what the answer is, but there was concern about funding for children with SEN who are needing one-to-one support and who've got EHCPs. Is there are you looking into the ways of funding those children in the early years setting?
Thank you. So yes, we do, part of the area that we're responsible for is the SEND team, and so we do receive requests for funding from providers. So the government funding is the government funding, that's what they provide for the place. But if a setting requires additional funding to meet the needs of children with SEN, then those requests come into the local authority and are considered, yeah.
I've just got one more question, if that's okay. The childminders, there was concern about accessing training and things. Is childminder training, is that put on quite regularly, and do we charge the childminders for that?
There are some training that is chargeable to childminders. I believe it's £10. I don't believe it's excessive. I believe it's £10. There is also plans for the summer term for a large conference that we funded for both childminders and the rest of the sector.
Sorry, can I just ask one more? I know when you don't charge for the training, you get a lot of people booking on and not many people turning up. With charging, do you find that you get a big intake?
We don't get any more, but we do get them, they turn up.
Any more for any more? Everybody? Yeah, Virginia.
Yeah, just on the back of what the councillor just said, I know that one of the comments mentioned training being held during working hours. So do you know if there are sort of alternative times that training can take place for childminders?
All childminder training takes place after the working day. It's always in the evening.
Councillor Wrigley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I'm really interested just to know how you will sort of balance the field. I know you sort of want to increase in certain areas and everything. How do you think that will be achieved, and what's your sort of timescale of getting a better sort of even distribution across the borough with placements?
Thank you. Timescale is it's an ongoing thing because the need changes dependent on where we are. Sometimes in the academic year, and sometimes it changes depending on growth in housing and need. What we do is we focus on areas of need first, but we can't make providers open where they don't want to provide open. So what this report does, it helps them to understand where it's a good place to open, and we work with providers to encourage them to open in those areas. What I would say is we are restricted in Thurrock around property and the amounts of suitable property that there are available for child care settings to open. So we're always mindful of, although we do have a list of providers that want to open, we're mindful there's very few properties that are available, both council properties and private properties that would be suitable and would meet the Ofsted requirements. So we have to work with what we've got, but also we're working very hard with schools to encourage schools to develop, to those schools that don't have nurseries, the purpose-built buildings, so that it would be easier for them to work with schools to try and increase their capacity, as well as childminders are more it's easier for a childminder to open a business in their home than it is for us to find buildings. So we're working with childminders as well to increase the number of childminders, focusing on the areas that are red, but also working with providers in the other areas as well.
Any more for any more? Just to show my ignorance of procedure, and, for those who think I know it all. Oh, sorry, David, you come on. Yes, show my ignorance. This report is very readable. It's also very specific, and it also highlights action that is needed in certain areas and certain wards within the borough. What happens to this report now? Does it go on a shelf, or what does it actually drive going forward?
So it drives the sufficiency work that we do in the early years part of the school effectiveness team. So there's a number of officers that work with providers so we've got, there's a number of government grants available for both wraparound and for nursery provision at the moment. And we work with providers to try to encourage them to open in areas of need, so obviously in the red and amber areas. So for instance, recently we just opened one at High House Production Park. That was with a grant from the council, government funded, but from the council, to open a provision for, I think it's 20 children under 5. And that was driven by knowing where the need is. It drives us to know, or make us understand where the need is wanted and where a business will be successful, because sometimes providers want to open where they want to open, but there isn't a need there. So we encourage them to work with us with this as evidence about where they can choose to open.
So, at the risk of being made to look foolish, which is not unusual for me, in terms of, when I say where does this go, we here as a scrutiny pro, we look at, and we can look at what you're doing, and it's a snapshot in time of where you are. In terms of where it goes from here, Cabinet, for example, will they see this and discuss it and note it and look at, because there are areas here, where, for example, just looking at Abley, statements that the ward should be considered a priority locality of focus for Thurrock Council. So somebody's going to make something happen to help you get out of that red rag situation. How do we help you as a committee get the assistance and the support that you need? You may say, it's all right, we've got it all covered and we know what we're doing, but it may well be you could do with one or two of us to rattle a few cages. I don't know. But that's what we're here to do. It's not just here to monitor you and say, we don't like this and we don't like that. It is very much part of our role, I believe, and I'm sure colleagues agree, to help. And just when you bring us, the idea of a red rag rating is exactly that. A rag rating is there's a target there, so we need a concerted effort from everybody involved to look at that target. And as I say, many times I've sat through tedious reports, and this isn't one, thank you. And then you see it put away, and you just think, well, that's another tick box for this year. We've done our annual report. Is there anything that you would like us to do as councillors, whether it be this committee, individuals, Cabinet, or Uncle Tom Cobley and all?
Thank you. And thank you for the comments on the report. I'll pass it back to the team. Yes, there are things that members can do. And one of them is around, we struggle with property, as I've just said, and identifying property, including council property that would be suitable even to be converted. The other thing that we ask, and it's in the recommendations, that we ask all members to be mindful of the council's duty around the sufficiency of places when considering developments and when considering, for example, place, when we're looking at planning permission for childminders to expand their provision, often they don't get planning permission because our planning rules don't allow for businesses in homes with more than one member of staff. So there are things that we do ask, and we've put in the recommendations. This also sits on our website, so it's and it has to be renewed every year. And what we hope, we've got parents and providers looking at this to see where nursery provision is and where nursery provision is required. So hopefully it also helps our suppliers, our providers, to know where to open and counsellors to know where places are needed.
Yeah, thank you. That is really, really useful. And I will take this and waive it when I go and report this meeting to Cabinet, their next meeting, because I think it's worthy of merit. I think it's worthy of saying, you know, we've got good people doing a good job, and they're on track and they're presenting it well and what have you, and they need our help. And just that cross-reference to planning, and it's not something that necessarily would, you know, we're here to look at health and well-being of all sorts of things, and yet, you know, just a simple thing that we could talk to colleagues who work in planning, and we could talk to colleagues on Cabinet who are involved with planning and setting strategy, and say, you know, had you thought about the impact of doing this or not doing that, which you bring into it. So as I say, well done. So at which point, we've got one of these rather strange sets of recommendations, which I don't really, and I'm not being critical in any way, because we are recommended to review the funded childcare provision and wraparound childcare needs, childcare needs sufficiency assessment to understand the supply and development requirements of early education, childcare and wraparound care in Thurrock. So I think we've done that, and your report has helped us to do that. So, but it's interesting. So I note that we've reviewed something. Everybody agree with that one, which is 2.1, and then consider the council's duty towards early years education and childcare in any new strategic developments. Well, that actually fits quite nicely what we've just talked about. So all of us be aware we've got a responsibility to give you the support that you need. Everybody happy with that? Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 7, which is the Youth Cabinet update. And unfortunately, we don't have any of our young people in the Youth Cabinet here with us this evening. Which, sorry? Page 207. Oh, yeah, thank you. It is a shame because they are worthy of public recognition, but hopefully everybody's looked through the briefing. Now, as suggested, does anybody have any issues they would like to raise or question? No? Well, in which case, and I can't remember, I've got an exact recommendation. I've got so much paperwork now. Do I have a recommendation? I didn't think I did on this one. So we note the report, but I would like to say very publicly, thank you to our Youth Cabinet. I was again at Corporate Parenting the other night, and we talked about the work of our young people in Cabinet. Sorry, Councillor Hartstein.
Sorry, Chair, my fault. Could I just clarify, I don't know who could answer, they were invited, were they just unable to make it? Because they do normally. Yeah, fantastic, thank you.
No, they were scared of me. So I lost my thread there. Yeah, so at Corporate Parenting, we spoke then about the work of the Youth Cabinet, but also about Young Voices. And they're two separate things. They're easy to mix them up. But sort of going back half an hour ago when we were talking about young people, you know, there are some great young people in this borough. We talk them down far too much. Old fogies like me, you were better in our day and we never did that. But there are an enormous amount of young people, and I touched earlier on organisations like Evolve down on the Globeworks, where I'm hoping to go down there shortly. They just do phenomenal stuff. And the guys and girls in Cabinet who come here and discuss and contribute and influence, that's the most important thing. They influence what we do. And so it should be, because it's their future that we're here to guard. So with great pleasure, I accept and note their briefing report with grateful thanks to everybody concerned. And so we move on to item 8, which is also going to involve young people. Just as a scene setter for this, Councillor Hartstein and Michelle and I were among those present at a recent meeting of parents concerned about ongoing events within the Mosbourne Educational Trust, which involves 3 schools, Hassenbrook, Gable Hall and Corringham Primary. And it was a somewhat disconcerting evening, and there was a general, I think we were all taken aback at the absolute passion and concern coming out from parents. I think there were 100 and, well, opinions vary on whether you're counting, or how you're counting, and somewhere between 130, 150 on a cold winter's night, just after Christmas, and that was extraordinary turnout. And it really shows that there is deep-seated concern about what's happening with Mosbourne. Councillor Hartstein and Michelle addressed the audience, and I think I spoke very briefly after Councillor John Kent had spoken as leader of the council, and basically just more or less praised what I've just said about how impressive it was that so many people were coming out, but also how worrying it was that there were so many concerns which were validated. And the one thing that the meeting showed was there were a lot of people who stood up and said, I thought I was on my own and I'd got these concerns and worries, and then other people stood up and had the same shares. So the question then comes out, what can Thurrock Council do? And the really truthful answer is not a lot. And we've got to be very specific about what we do. The area in which we can have influence, where we can probe with veracity, is in safeguarding. That's, we can't get involved in a dispute with the NASWT and the teaching unions and stuff like that. That's not our business, unfortunately. It used to be local education authorities. It was part and parcel of what they did. It isn't anymore. You like it or lump it, it's the way the world is. So we've got some specific things that we can do, and Matt and myself and people have sat down and come up with what we can actually achieve through a task and finish group. Councillor Kent very proffered the support of officers and council behind that task and finish group, and I'm sure that will be upheld. So really what I'd like to do is ask Matt if he can present this item and talk about what we can and can't do and how we can possibly achieve it. And then I think we can probably have a little wider debate on it, having been informed.
Thank you, Chair. I don't plan to say too much. I think all I was going to say is obviously the decision to establish a task and finish group on this issue rests with the committee tonight. And obviously the scoping document attached to the agenda represents activities that align with the rules and procedures of what a task and finish group could do. As the Chair alluded to, myself, Michelle, Claire and the Chair met a couple of weeks ago to talk about the potential options for this, and we did discuss some parameters and as the Chair says, some specifics about what we can actually involve ourselves in as an overview and scrutiny task and finish group. And I thought it'd just be useful to list those for the committee for consideration or as part of their consideration for tonight. Firstly, schools have their own complaints process, so a task and finish group could not replace that formal complaints process. The Mosbourne Academy would not be obliged to engage with us as a task and finish group. The task and finish group would not be able to check the factuality of any submissions by parents. In the interest of balance, I think we agreed to accept both positive and negative examples in relation to the schools. And obviously, because the way the schools work and operate with the council, it would be for the portfolio holder to progress any recommendations that the task and finish group made through you, the parent committee. And then just to go into a little bit of detail about the document, the proposal is obviously to undertake a well-managed consultation. So officers would draft a consultation for this, not this committee, rather the task and finish group to agree, could then be rolled out to parents to provide the task and finish group with some information, and that information would then be used in a witness session with parents and the Mosbourne Academy invited as witnesses, so that the group could understand better if there are any issues, what those issues might be, and to form recommendations to the portfolio holder based on that evidence gathered. And that's all I'll say on the matter, I think, Chair.
Okay, well, I will just go on to, and then I'll invite comment, because obviously I've been, as a ward councillor over there, I've got a lot of families whose children, particularly Hassenbrook, which is very close to my ward, but also I spend a lot of time out and about in that local community, and people don't recognise ward boundaries when they bring issues to you. I don't know how many people here have been following the Mosbourne saga. It's been drawn out now over, probably in terms of Mosbourne, probably, well, just over a year. The background to the problem is we've got two failing schools at secondary level that have really dipped over recent years. And I said this publicly when I spoke to parents. You know, we always like to play the blame game sometime, but I think this time we can play the blame game with some degree of absolution, because unfortunately the O2 Federation, which managed these schools for a number of years under a rather authoritarian head. Barry knows Dr. Asong quite well, who then became the CEO of the trust, and I think basically just ran everything single-mindedly and whatever. And I'm a personal friend of some of the governors, a couple of the governors, and I've said it to their face. I think they abdicated their responsibility. They didn't do what they were charged to do as governors. They didn't question, they didn't scrutinise, and I think, quite frankly, they were scared to death of her. You know, and I can say that because the outcome was that, you know, Gable Hall, which was, you know, when I came to Thurrock 21 years ago, Gable Hall was in the top 10 schools in the country. You know, that's how highly rated it was. And it's now at the bottom of the Ofsted scale. But more importantly than that is we have some incredibly unhappy families. We also have some happy families. You know, again, talk glass half full, glass half empty. But I think there is a genuine concern the way the management of these schools and the state of well-being of children within those schools was allowed to deteriorate. So it hit a low point. There were still occasional successes, but there was more bad news than good, far more bad news than good. And so it came to a head. The DFE stepped in and basically looked at O2 and said, "No, sorry, your time's up. You've had your opportunity to sort it out and you haven't done it." And credit due where it's due, the DFE Eastern Region made that decision and set about trying to find a trust. And I'm just filling in a bit of history if anybody doesn't know it. Initially, the Harris organisation, which has got schools in the borough, as you know, stepped up to the plate and went in and was a reasonably well accepted choice. They came in, they worked within the school for a period of time. They started to introduce their methodology as a trial. They also picked up the accounts and they ran away scared. And from what I've seen lately, you can perhaps understand why. I'm not being judgmental on that. You know, they were in, they had a good look. They were seen to be a panacea for some of the evils, but it was too big a challenge for them. So at that point, the Gateway Learning Community, which runs the schools, Kevin Sadley did good work down there over the years, which was the replacement for Torrells and St. Chad's, and has become recognisably, I think, a decent educational. I mean, it's not the top of its game in education, but it does pretty well. And they were prepared to take over, and so much so that Kevin, who just retired, and who indeed was in the Mayor's Chamber receiving an honour for his service for education in the borough, took on the mantle and became the interim CEO at O2, with a view to, I think, guiding Gateway in. But the DFE didn't want that, and they went back to market and went to Mosbourne, which is a East London-based cluster of schools, in Hackney-based really. I think it's off the top of my head, 4 secondaries and a couple of primaries. And they have been remarkably successful in academic terms, really successful. They took Hackney Grammar School, which I think was, in contrast to Gable, was rated as one of the worst schools in the country. They were helped because the government and the London, whoever it is, financed it, built them a brand new school, which is always a good start. But they turned it round. But they turned it round by using what the CEO of the group, they turned out Mosbornians. and they do things in a particular way, and they have a particular love of highly disciplined school organisations. And you could, you know, whether you like it or lump it, the academic outturn has been good, or at least the statistical academic outturn has been good, because they get good figures. But some have argued, and there was a lot of pressure in Hackney, they've argued that the statistics are good because they've taken out all the difficult kids. And it's always better if you go with the leaders, you're always going to get better results than if you go with a whole composite body within the school. Anyway, that was it. Anyway, they're in, and they came in, and it then took them, I think there were 3 missed deadlines for them to take over formally. But finally, on, I think it was either the 31st of December or 1st of January, whichever version you read, they actually took over. But there's been a huge amount of discontent. Because Mosbourne, once they came over, their CEO became the acting CEO, a chap called Peter Hughes, and he started to do things the Mosbourne way, which was massively different to the way that Auto had run those schools. And there was a huge culture change that was received well by, you know, there were a lot of parents who genuinely liked what they were seeing. They were critical of the lack of discipline in schools, and they thought it was a good thing. There were also a lot of people who moaned, and of course those who moan always shout louder than those who praise. And we had situations where kids were turning up at school on the first day of term and were being sent home because their skirts were either an inch too short or their shoes weren't the recommended style or whatever, and there was no tolerance. There was no, look, you've got a week to put it right. It was, you're going home. And so a lot of bad feeling crept in, and then bad feeling generated a cloud around the school, and a lot of unhappiness. And as I say, it has to be kept in perspective. There were happy parents there, but it grew and grew and grew in the sense of disquiet, and the amount of complaints that we were receiving as ward councillors was amazing. I mean, all the councillors, I would suggest, and I'm sure John would recognise it, all the councillors over in the east of the borough, in Stamford and Corringham and Fobbin, Homesteads Ward, we were getting stories of discontent, and the parents really weren't being well. The Mosbourne culture is do not communicate. And I don't think I'm out of order in saying that. And I'm just painting a picture of what we're going to go into and the solution we've got to come up with. There was a culture of not communicating. They didn't communicate with parents. They actually went out of their way not to communicate with parents. And I've seen evidenced instances. I'm not just making that up. I've seen emails that have gone unanswered. I've had conversations about unanswered telephone calls, pledges to get back to you that were never honoured. So it was definitely there. But then a group of parents, and a guy called Roy Nineham, who became a bit of a lead, got together, and as parents started to lead and I'll use the word fight back, because it's probably not inappropriate, and they organised these parents' meeting that we attended. And I think, you know, we looked and talked to each other as council representatives and said, you know, we have to be really clear. You know, at the end of the day, as the LEA, you know, the LEA effectively now is just an administrative thing for certain functions. We only actually have 2 schools that are under our control, and indeed, you know, we should have a member from one of those schools here, but it just doesn't work out that way. And so, you know, can we influence things for the better? Can we be a voice for parents? And I think that is what this task and finish is, as Matt said. It's gathering evidence that we can put legitimately to Mosbourne and say, look, we're impartial. We are impartial. But we're also here to support our residents and our parents. We're also here to support the school staff and the school, you know, the school governing body, and indeed the whole principle of having good schools in the borough. And we need to talk, and we need to have dialogue, and we need a bit of compromise possibly, because for better or for worse, you know, Corringham and Stamford is not Hackney. It really isn't. And so I don't think that they've been as amenable to change from their thing. It has started to change, and there has been an improvement. There's been industrial action, which has got nothing to do with us, which hasn't helped. But that's just painted the picture of where we're at. So what our thoughts, Councillor Hartstein, Councillor Kent, Michelle, we discussed it, what can we do? And we think we can become that neutral voice that can take on and bring pressure to bear, because we do have, the one thing we've got is a safeguarding responsibility. And I won't tell you some of the stories we get in other than one. You know, there's a story of a child who was in school who asked to go to the toilet, and the Mosbourne policy is you don't go to the toilet and until there's a certain amount of time. And indeed, from what I understand, the toilets are actually locked. And that child was told, no, you can't go to the toilet. And actually, that child wet themselves in classroom. And the teacher made that child sit in that classroom in that state. Now, that's not an apocryphal story. I've spoken to the parents. That actually happened. I don't think Mosbourne take a degree of pride in it, and they have apologised. Let's get that quite clear. They have apologised. But that child has now left that school and gone somewhere else. That's the impact that it had. That's a safeguarding issue. That's an issue that affects the mental health of children. And so I think we can influence it. We can be that voice for parents. We can be that voice for children. And don't forget, there are, I think it's 5, or I should know this off the top of my head, I think it's 5 or it might be 9. The 2 numbers spring to mind of our own corporate children in those schools. So we do have a voice as corporate parents as well as a safeguarding authority. So that's enough for me. I wanted to paint a picture, so because I'm going to ask some of you to give up some of your precious time to try and make this happen, and that will involve dealing with those parents. It will involve dealing with Mosbourne, and it isn't going to be something that's easy to do. I can't help you as chair. Whether I can help as ward councillor, I don't know. But you know, I'd hope that some of you are prepared to step forward and take on this challenge. It's going to be very short. I mean, we've set a time frame, I think it's 10 weeks, because it's literally get a snapshot in time now, find out what we've got, and then take it to Mosbourne and just try and say, look, this is the world that we're in Thurrock. We're not happy with it. We don't believe that you can be happy with it. Where can we compromise? Where can we improve? And that's all we can do. We can ask those questions. We can put it on the table. We can't force anybody to do anything. So I'll shut up now, and if anybody's got anything to say. Barry.
I tried to hold my hand down because I don't think I'd be able to sit on this task and finish group, because we're not supposed to be biased. But I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for this. But I come at this so biased that I lay this firmly at the hands of the regional schools director. Because when this first happened, and I know all those trusts, I don't know anything about Mosbourne, I really don't. But when this first happened, the SLT in this council, and me included, had a perfect replacement to go in there and do it. We put that forward. They totally ignored us. In fact, I felt as though they actually snubbed it and said, well, we don't give a monkeys what you are. And we run this council. We thought we knew the best people for it. It may have been wrong, I don't know, but they never gave it the chance. I don't think they gave us any opportunity at all to put forward who we wanted. So if this task and finish group can do anything, I'd like it to include the regional schools director or the DOF or whoever they are, to ask them to start listening to the people that run the council and know the council, so they can put forward a real proper brokerage deal to go through and hold that school, in my opinion, will be thriving by now. So I'm not sure I'm the one who can sit on this because I am biased.
I'll go to people who've raised their hands, Councillor Hartstein next, but what I would say, Barry, is I've known you for, been in your company and observed you and seen you at work for a long time. And I would disagree with you, because I think in a way that bias would be really useful. And I also think you're objective enough to actually bring your experience and knowledge to bear. But it's a matter for yourself, your conscience, and whether you think you can contribute. And it may be we don't get any volunteers to do this, which would be a shame. You know, I don't think being prejudicial is a reason not to be on something, because I go back to that well-worn phrase, you can make a difference from where you are. Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few points in terms of the wording that I'm not happy with, but before we come on to that, can I just raise public, please, on record that I'm really uncomfortable about what you've just shared there in terms of some of the issues that have been going on at the school, and I do want to raise that, and I want that minuted, please. I'm extremely unhappy about that. And also some of that's factually incorrect, also what you shared. And I just wanted to put that on record, and I'm happy to write to you to correct what's been stated there that's incorrect.
Say it now, Councillor Hartstein. You won't offend me if you think, if
No,
I've done wrong, then I've done wrong.
It's nothing to do with offending you. It's that I don't actually want to discuss the issues in a public forum because I don't think it's appropriate. But I've also got some points to raise on the actual topic.
I mean, I would say I think the 150 people or 130 people in that room would disagree with you, but there you go.
Yeah, it's not about you and protecting anybody in this room. It's about some of the issues that you've raised is not appropriate to be discussing in a public forum, but I'll come to that later. Or I'll come back to you about that in writing. Could I, Matt, is it appropriate to raise some of the wording with you? Would that be okay? Is it you I would raise that with, or Chair, or...?
Yeah, through the chair.
Through the chair?
You would have the ability to suggest any changes to the wording to clarify any thoughts or meanings on the proposal.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to come down on the front there on the governance background, page 209. It's about the fourth or fifth line down, where it says, following alleged safeguarding concerns raised by parents in relation to the Mossbourne Federation takeover. Can we just reword that, please? Because it's not a takeover, it's a rebrokering. So I thought perhaps we'd have the wording in terms of, in relation to the rebrokering of Gable Hall, Hassenbrook and Corringham to the Mossbourne Federation, please, if that's okay. And down the bottom, it's in that paragraph, it's probably just a point of clarification. But firstly, Michelle Lucas, as the Assistant Director for Education, is missing off that list there in terms of the people that was in attendance. And also, I'm not quite sure how we word this in terms of the representatives from Mossbourne Federation, because there weren't any at that meeting. There was a gentleman there who was a governor of Ortu, but there weren't any Mossbourne Federation representatives. So I just think that's quite important to clarify that, because obviously historic, you know, this is going to be a historical document. And then just on page 210, please, point 1, so the purpose of the task and finish group is to assess if there are safeguarding concerns. I don't think that's an appropriate task for a task and finish group to do, because I'm not sure they're qualified to do that. Could we change it to assess if there may be safeguarding concerns? Thank you. Because yeah, that leaves me a little uneasy. And then that leads me down onto number 3 then, point 2 on number 3. The group may be able to provide an objective and well-evidenced view on whether there may be safeguarding issues at the school, because I think that would be for the local authority to clarify yes or no, as opposed to the task and finish group. And I think that was all of the points I had there. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. I mean, I'm not going to argue the semantics of there are, maybe, whatever. Happy to take the wording that you think is appropriate. I'm quite surprised with what you said, because everything that I just laid out to members, everything is already in the public domain. Every single bit that I said is already in the public domain, including the story of the child whose parents are more than happy for it to be in the public domain. And I know because of I just know because the conversations have been had. So, you know, I don't think it was inappropriate to share that, an exemplar of what the sort of level of problem is. I don't think that's inappropriate at all. And in terms of everything else, I don't know, I gave an anecdotal thing that's there. What I didn't do, because I didn't want to particularly influence the thing, but if you're going to go down, you know, there are two independent inquiries into Mosbourne in Hackney. One with 250 evidenced cases of potential child safeguarding issues. It's a fact. It's a public fact. It's a fact that's there. The council has actually done it. Peter Hughes has answered those questions on BBC, and said he doesn't understand or recognise that they're there. But, you know, the representatives of Hackney Council have said, yes, there are, and have launched inquiries. So you pay your money and you choose who you believe. And I do understand you're at the sharp end of this, because you've got to deal, as education portfolio holder, with the Mosbourne people directly. And so has Michelle, and so has Sheila. And all three of you have done so, and have done admirable things. But I'm sorry, I don't think we can sugarcoat the situation we're in. And I would be letting down all those parents that have come to me and said, we need your help. We want the council to do something. And I've been the first to say there's very little that we can do. But I ain't going to sugarcoat how serious this situation is, because it really is serious. We've got children, and we've had evidence from parents. Okay, you can argue it's anecdotal because we haven't got the medical records, talking about self-harming and all the other issues that have gone on. Now, we've got to try and set that aside, but you can't deny that that's what's being said at public meetings. And parents were grateful for the opportunity to bring that into the public domain. Now, if you've got parents who are prepared to bring it into the public domain in front of 100 other people, I don't see why it shouldn't be a topic for discussion in this chamber. I really don't. But we're going to have to agree to disagree, and I'll look forward to reading what you think I've said that's incorrect. And everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Anybody else got anything to say? Yeah, Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. Firstly, will the school even cooperate? And secondly, if there are maybe safeguarding issues, is a task and finish group the best way to assess it? Is there not a more internal council, local authority approach that would be better to take?
I could defer to Michelle on that, because she spoke to the parents directly.
So, as I explained on the evening, the process is that if a parent is unhappy, they follow the complaints process, in any organisation actually. If they don't feel that it's been addressed in an appropriate manner, then they refer those to Ofsted. And interestingly, colleagues, what happens, of course, is Ofsted send those to us to review. So they go into Ofsted send them to the local authority to review. So that is the process. So that's the internal process that you're talking about. And apologies, Councillor Rigby, I didn't catch your first point. Apologies.
It was even if they would actually cooperate in any manner. I mean, but do they have to cooperate, or could they just refuse to meet members?
The short answer to that, Councillor Rigby, is they don't have to cooperate. However, we are working closely with them. I'm glad Councillor Spate was very clear about the fact that we have been engaging with the Trust. You'll be aware that we work very collegiately in partnership with our trusts locally. They are very new to the borough, so we're making sure that they understand how Thurrock operates. So, but to answer your question, they don't have to. I'd like to think that, working in that collegiate way, they'd like to bring that forward.
I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Legge, but just to add to that, we did have discussion immediately after that meeting about what we could actually achieve and what would happen if Mosbourne didn't engage. And the route then is if they don't engage, and we are responsible for safeguarding. That's part of our civic duty. It's our statutory duty. We can't walk away from that responsibility just because it's difficult. So our route, if Mosbourne didn't engage, and we did enough work and proper work to find that there was a genuine problem that we felt was a problem as an authority, we would take that to the DFE. I think, is that right?
Thank you. Can I come back in? I think the other thing to is that the actual Mosbourne Federation have been holding meetings with parents. Our understanding is that I think actually the chair did mention that they've been holding meetings with parents to try and sort of, I guess, alleviate some of the concerns that were raised on that evening. I think the other thing to remember is if Ofsted get a number of complaints, that can trigger an inspection. So Ofsted have the, obviously the ability, if they feel there's a number of, as Councillor Spate said, safeguarding concerns, that would trigger an Ofsted inspection. So it's another check and balance.
Anything else, Councillor Rigby?
No, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Leakey?
Thank you, Chair. My question is to portfolio holder, Councillor Hastings. Have you been able to kind of work with the school to find out the safeguarding issues that have been happening in Mossburn? Have you had any chance to have any discussion around it, or have you met with them to find out what kind of safeguarding practices or happening in the trust?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I have, Councillor Leakey. I've met with the DFE, and I've also met with the CEO, Peter Hughes, to raise it. I've met alongside Michelle Lucas, and I've also met alongside Sheila Murphy as well. We've met both of them, as I say, with the DFE and also with the CEO there, Peter Hughes. And I have that open conversation with him that if I do want to speak to him again, which I absolutely intend to, that will be through Michelle and through Sheila. But yes, just to reassure you, I have spoken to him. I have raised a number of concerns that were brought to me. Some of these issues were one of them. There are other issues around curriculum, staffing and all manner of things. But yes, I have spoken.
Councillor, yeah, carry on, Councillor. Just
one more question. What's the Ofsted rating for Mossburn at the moment?
It was not for Mossburn at the moment because it would be for Ortu. So, Michelle, is it Hassenbrook is inadequate and Gable Hall is, wrong way round. Gable Hall is inadequate and Mossburn, Hassenbrook requires improvement, which is why, just to clarify, that's why the rebrokering was initially initiated was because of that inadequate.
One more question, sorry. Do we have any idea the kind of safeguarding issues that have been raised by parents and the children? Do you have any idea? If you can share that information with us, if you don't mind.
There were a range of issues raised on that evening on the parents' meeting, but I've only seen one specific safeguarding issue. The others were parents who felt unhappy and worried about the situation, but I've only seen one specific concern. Just to say that has been dealt with. So,
Councillor Johnston was next.
Have we any idea why it hasn't sprung an actual inspection from Ofsted yet? I mean, if there really was, 150 people there, one would assume that a majority of them have written in complaints. I don't understand why Ofsted haven't come in yet. I mean, and I'm just looking to try and find who, because at the moment I don't think we're the right people to do this. I have to be honest. That's my honest opinion. Ofsted should surely. Am I wrong? Sorry,
You're absolutely right, Councillor Johnson. However, as I said, Ofsted send the complaints to us, and we've had 2. That's the number we've had currently, Councillor. So, yeah, that's where we currently are with it. That's not, I think it's fair to say, that's not to take away. I think there was a lot of anxiety in the room from parents. I understand that. I think Councillor Spate outlined some of the challenges. It has taken a significant amount of time for the rebrokerage. So, I absolutely understand that parents, do feel sort of anxious. But currently we've had 2 come in.
and not to get your wrath, should I say, I really do believe then that it should be left to the portfolio holder and the senior leadership team to undertake this. I can't, as a councillor who's been in that position as a portfolio holder, I really think you need to be given the time and space to get it right. And I at the moment, I feel that with the type of questioning that we're looking to do here, it probably wouldn't help. That's just my own opinion.
Councillor Fish?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think a task and finish group is the best way to approach this, and if there are other ways, I would probably explore those first. As you say, Councillor Hartstein's probably best placed to.
Councillor Fish?
Yeah, I tend to agree. Having listened to what you've said and what everybody else has said, it seems to me there are lots of organisations, lots of structures within education that are trying to deal with this already. Ofsted, pretty key, I should think. And presumably, if out of the two schools, one is inadequate and the other one requires improvement, they've both got huge action plans that they need to be working through, which surely is going to, part of that is going to be about resolving these issues. So, you know, I don't think a task and finish group would really necessarily help.
Councillor Cecil?
I was at the meeting on January the 2nd, and there were parents from the 3 schools. And the difficulty is the 3 schools are totally different. You've got a primary school, which has had a fantastic reputation in the area. One has, Hasselbrook has not had such a good record, and as the chair said, Gable Hall was one of the best. So the task of a task and finish group is going to be extraordinarily difficult because each of those schools has its own difficulties and problems and its own parents, and they don't talk to each other. Who do you go and you just make yourself available and ask people to come and talk to us? It will be extraordinarily difficult to set this up. We need a little bit of thought about it, how we're going to approach it.
Okay, I'll just touch on a couple of things there, because clearly I do think that it's something that we should do. And the reason I think it's something that we should do is because a substantive number of parents in this borough have turned to Thurrock Council and said, we're struggling to deal with this. Mosbon aren't talking to us. The Department for Education are not interested, and Barry himself has made reference to the fact that they can be very obdurate and they don't see anybody else's point of view, and it was they made the decision and they're sticking by it. And those parents were feeling isolated. So they turned initially to the ward council, to the ward councillors, and they turned to themselves and formed a parents group that was knocked back initially by Mosborne. They refused to talk to that committee of parents who'd got together. And that's true, because I was party to the information. I saw copies of the emails that went from the parents who were trying to engage with the school. And the school would not engage with them. And then we had that meeting. And at that meeting, the leader of this council, the education portfolio holder for this council, and the senior education officer of this council offered, and I'm quite astonished, Councillor Hartstein, that you said one thing to a load of parents, and now everybody can change their mind. Of course you can, and experience maybe have brought different things into play. But we offered support. And when I say we, I mean the corporate we, the leader of the council, the most, leading councillor, and the senior education officer offered support. And we said, what would you want us to do? And they just said, help us. So we said, we'll form a task and finish group, and we'll see what pressure we can bring to bear. And then we said exactly the same things that I said to you. There is a very limited field that we can put pressure on Mosborne. But I'll tell you what's happened. Because we did that, because Osborne suddenly perceived that this is a council that is going to engage, that is going to come in and do what it's got a right to do, which is look at safeguard. I'm not talking about changing, opinions. The curriculum's changed. You've got to do history and RE now, and you can't do a number of any other subjects, the whole thing. But that's not in our domain to do, and that's a concern for parents. But we can't do anything about that. We can't. But they came to us and said, my child is in pain. My child is hurting. My child is crying. That's what they said. And we said, we will help. And the only practical way we can help is to bring pressure to bear on the school. And the only practical way we can bring pressure to bear is by doing something constructive and positive and gathering evidence. Now, with the greatest respect, if we can't, who else is going to gather that evidence if we don't form a working party to try and gather it? All we're going to do is set up some meeting options for parents to come to. They may not come. Fine. We will canvass people, we'll have a survey online or whatever it is we need to do. They may not take part in that survey. We will say to Mosbourne, can we come in and talk to your teachers? Can we come in and talk to your support staff? Can we come in and talk to children in school? Can we see actually the positive evidence that you say you're bringing? They may say yes, they may say no, but we're entitled to ask. Now, as councillors, council gets the blame for everything, don't they? It's always the bloody council's fault. The council this, the council that, and we are somewhat informed, know that sometimes it isn't our fault. But we get the blame for it. Now on this one, people are going to turn to the council. They do. They're looking at Thurrock Council because that's the way it used to be. They don't understand the minutiae of detail that we've now got academisation. They turn to their council, the council that they pay their council tax to, and the councillors that they elect to represent them. That's what they do. And they came to us and they said, help. Now, we can decide to try and help, and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that this is easy. If I started off by saying this is going to be incredibly difficult. But are we really prepared to ignore that cry for help? Because if we are, then if that's the majority of feeling in this room, and if people aren't prepared to have a go, then that's all we can do. I forget who was next up to speak.
Thank you, Chair. What I wanted to kind of point out is that Councillor Vicky Van Hasten, sorry, trying to call your name in full, is already engaging with Mosbourne, and we need to know the outcome of the discussion before we can get involved, or we need to share that information with the committee. I'm not sure what Task and Finish group will do at this point, since Councillor Hassan is already working with the school. I think it will be a question of roles for us to get involved, and it might be too much, handling such tasks. So I believe, since Sheila, you're involved as well. Are you involved, Sheila? If Sheila is involved, Children's Services is involved, and Vicky and Councillor Hassan is involved, I think we should kind of leave them to do the job and then let us know what the outcome is, and we can take it from there. That's my opinion.
I don't want to cancel. Your answer to that, Councillor Reek, is you look at Section 3. How will the success of a task be measured? What we do, because we will undertake a relevant and well-managed consultation that collects usable data. Who else is going to do that if we don't? Because the parents don't have the resource to do that. The group being able to provide an objective and well-evidenced view on whether there are safeguarding issues. It could easily be that the Task and Finish group concludes this is a minority of people protesting and there are no significant safeguarding issues at that school. What's wrong with establishing that? And a set of clear, measurable and achievable recommendations to take to Cabinet Member for Children's Services and Education and for senior officers to use in their future work with the schools. So we will be on a learning curve, as well as maybe doing some good. That's what we can do. And these have been carefully thought out and worded by officers who've looked at what options are available to us, what legally we can do. Not what we'd like to do in a dream scenario. It is what we can do, what we can deliver within the parameters of this council. And it's collect evidence. And if we're not the guardians and the watchdogs of looking after our residents and our children by collecting evidence, then I don't know what our purpose is. But
I just wanted to say that I agree with the spirit of what this committee or the Task and Finish group is trying to do. However, as has kind of been mentioned, I'm just not sure if this is the correct vehicle to get that desired outcome. And I don't think it's a situation where we're ignoring parents' cries for help, as you mentioned, because personally, I'm someone who went to a school where some of the things that you're talking about, students and we went through this kind of stuff. So it's not something that we're apathetic to, we don't understand. I really do understand kind of some of the concerns that have been raised. However, I don't think that a Task and Finish group setting one up and holding these sessions, how do we make sure that it's not essentially just a talking shop where people come? Of course, people want to have a listening ear, someone to talk to express their concerns. But if we're limited, considering this is an academy in terms of what we can actually pressure them to do or to change, then I'm just not sure it would be as effective as maybe we'd hope. So I don't think the question is whether we care or not. I think we all care. I just don't think that the Task and Finish group might be the best place to do it. But again, that's my opinion.
Councillor Heath.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with what's been said. My concern would be that the hard work that Councillor Hartstein and Michelle and Sheila are putting in will just be broken because, you know, if we're sort of going in separate to them and, you know, riling everybody up again, I think what you find with a lot of the time with parents and with education is that there will be big issues, as you said, the beginning of January, but things move on so quickly. And if Mossbourne are meeting with the parents, we'll probably find that most of the parents are quite happy now. And, you know, things aren't as bad as they were.
Well, anybody else want to speak?
I'm prepared to take part in a Task and Finish group because I do believe that we need to support our parents, and having been at the meeting where we did offer to them help, we can't turn back now and throw it back in their face. So if it's collecting evidence, as I said before, are we going to be doing it with the 3 schools? Or do we just go to the 2 senior, the secondary schools rather than the primary? But that's something that can be discussed in the scope of things. But yes, I think we've got to make ourselves available, and I think we've got to offer ourselves as a support for the parents.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a little bit unfair to say we're not ready to stand up, because I think most people have said something about this, so that's unfair. But you know, that things are said in the heat at the moment. I'm not going to fall out on that. I see no problem with the Task and Finish group, but I think there needs to be a step in front of it. You know, we can't collect the evidence. The evidence must come from the parents and the children, and that evidence must go to Ofsted, and then it comes to us. Then we can sit down and we can do this. My advice on the night would have been to parents, yes, we're help, but you need to help us. You need to put those complaints into Ofsted. We can then deal with them. But I can't see a Task and Finish group sitting there looking at 2 specific letters. It just doesn't warrant it, in my opinion. It's a good Task and Finish group. The wording's good. I have no problem with that. But I think there needs to be a step before it where we have the evidence that, that the parents have provided through Ofsted, come back to us, then bring this back again by all means. I think that's the best offer of help we can give to the parents at the moment.
Yeah, all views welcomed, and I've said enough, so I won't say any more. I think what we do is, I would propose that, sorry,
Thank you, Chair. just in terms of before we moved forward, I just wanted to share just a little bit more of a sort of an update in terms of what the Chair had said, just to reassure you in terms of what the outcomes were from the meeting. I don't remember agreeing to to a task and finish group myself personally, but what I did agree to is that the parents wanted to continue holding monthly meetings, and I agreed to attend those every month. Without fail. I also agreed, obviously, to continue to work with the DFE, with the CEO of the Mossbourne Federation, and with the senior officers here. I gave my email address to any parent that asked for it at that meeting. I had my cards with me. I gave them one of my cards. I also directed them how to find me on, obviously, on the Thurrock website. I invited them that if they had followed the school's complaints procedure and they were still unhappy, they were to come to me and I would pick it up as cabinet member. I obviously also reminded them to follow the school's complaints policy and then also to contact Ofsted. From that, I have had one parent contact me direct, and again, I've picked that up and I've worked with senior officers around that specific issue. But just, you know, just to sort of reassure you, I have laid all of those things out, and I have promised to continue my support with the parents and working with the school, with the DFE and with senior officers, just to reassure you all. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Anybody got any?
Thank you, Chair. What I would perhaps think would be a good idea would be for Councillor Hartstein and the officers to report back to us at the next meeting with an update, and you know, we can make any decisions on any further action or processes at that point, and continue to monitor as well, if that's an option.
That may well be. I mean, we said we would do what we said we would do. We didn't put a time curve on it, so if the thing does not improve, then we can revisit it if that's what people think is prudent. So, I mean, I'll make a suggestion that then, bearing in mind the mood of the room and the constructive comments that have come from everybody, whatever the positioning is where you think, that we take this matter, we put it, we don't have another meeting now until March. So that's what's well, however many weeks it is. March, February's only 28 days, so it's best part of 5 weeks. And that we ask Councillor Hartstein if she would return to that meeting and give us an updated report in conjunction with Michelle Lucas on the state of play within Mossbourne. And I'm happy to put that forward, and if people want to see that as a course of action, please say yes and we'll move on. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we'll now move on to item 9, the final of the evening, which is our work programme, which may now include an update on Mossbourne to add into the 4th of March meeting, but I'm sure Carly and Claire will take care of that. We're not looking too far ahead really, because that will be possibly our last meeting, dependent upon whether we're going to the polls or not going to the polls or whatever. But we've got 5 items already in there, with the finance item, Better Care Together, Thurrock Delivery Plan, Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing Report, Cabinet Member for Children's Services and Education, Cabinet Member to come and report. That's self-explanatory. I think it's extremely likely that, and you'll have to leave it, I mean, I'm not quite sure what we can and can't do now because it's a strange new book of rules, but I'm pretty certain that we will want to call the Mid and South Essex Hospitals Trust to speak to us, whether they do it online or whether they do it in person, because of the ongoing issues that I know are going to happen. Well, not that they are going to happen, so maternity issues are underway at the moment. So that is something that I think we could put in provisionally. Anybody else got anything that they think we should be looking at? Okay. Are you okay with that, ladies? All right. Well, in that case, thank you to everybody who's contributed this evening. And if we have differing opinions, that's not a problem. That's what we're here to be. Absolutely. And you know, there's no, you know, there's no grudges. There's no whatever. The outcomes are the outcomes. And what I would like to say is to say thank you once again to those councillors who have put in volumes of work. And I would say thank you to Councillor Hartstein for attending meetings at the school. She didn't have to go there, and certainly she has followed it through what she said she would do. So deserves praise for doing that. I'd like to thank Michelle in particular for taking the lead, and also some of the other officers over there. As I say, we don't always get everything that we want. We don't always see eye to eye, but I think that's another constructive meeting, which I'm delighted to bring to a close, so I don't engage the wrath of other councillors at 9:10 this evening. Thank you very much indeed.